There are two maritime rules of the road definitions that seem to generate a lot of controversy. That is, the scheme of right-of-way versus stand-on when boats meet. Some people use the term right-of-way all the time and insist on it in action when on the water. And others will pound the desk and say there is no such thing as right-of-way at all. Now I'm going to show you in the books where both of these assumptions are actually wrong. So is one of the definitions wrong? Or are there situations where we should use one over the other? And what are the obligations or limitations of the skipper when using one or the other? Hi, this is Captain Tom again. I am a United States Coast Guard MMC, Master Mariner Captain. I've been a boat owner, skipper, charter master, bareboat charter qualifier, sailing instructor, and have assisted in hundreds of sailors in embryo achieve their dreams. I've also been a commercial captain for vessels of up to around 100 feet. But I'm also a U.S. sailing club-level judge and have been a sailing competitor for many decades. In that capacity, I've been at the protest table to adjudicate situations, as well as being on the winning and losing side as a participant. Now, for those of you who are not racers, keep in mind that the risk to loss of life and property is still present when racing. It needs to be included to give a complete picture. For those of you who are racers, just be assured that there's another level of legality beyond the racing rules that is the bigger picture. It's from this background that I think it's very important to dismiss the myths and get the story straight. Now, I'm going to steer away from interpretations of the definitions. I'm merely going to point out where they are stated in the authoritative rules. I'll show you in the pages in the books involved, so don't take my word for it, and you can make up your own mind about where and when the presumptive statements made at the beginning of this video are both right and wrong. So first I would ask, if you like this and you're sticking around, please punch that like button. It really helps me out, as well as the subscribe and notify, and you will get all of the other videos that I'll make free of charge, thanks to YouTube. Okay, got that punched? Let's dig in. The truth is, right-of-way and stand-on are talking about different actions, but they are both relevant in the right situations. And note that I use the word actions. There are obligations and limitations to each, as you will see. Having right-of-way doesn't mean you can do anything you want. But I hear the argument, oh, but they sound so much alike. Or, why does this matter? Well, why we could say that we should just avoid all situations where a collision can be involved and just say, I stay away from everything. Most of the time, perhaps that's possible. But the reality is that there will be situations that you legally need to know what to do at a moment's notice. When I'm skippering commercial vessels with 150 passengers or so, and interacting with pleasure craft, I need to know what my legal responsibility and liability is when potential loss of life or property is involved. But I would also add that they are not absolved from not knowing the rules either. While I also adhere to stay away from anything risky, and in my multi-decade career that I never got even close to having a problem, I still needed to know. The other skipper needs to know what your obligations or their obligations are per the law as well. So this is what the rules are for. So think of the Andrea Doria, a luxury ocean liner which, even though had a long-range radar contact with the liner MS Stockholm, through a series of missteps and lack of communication, the other liner suddenly appeared on a collision course while the Andrea Doria was at full speed in a thick fog. Now, it ended up being determined that both skippers were at fault, and the Andrea Doria ended up getting T-boned nearly amidships, not just a swipe. And the Andrea Doria now sits at the bottom of the Atlantic, not too far from New York City. Loss of life as well as property ensued. Why? Because the rules of the road procedures were not followed. And the reality is that there are countless situations like the Andrea Doria and the MS Stockholm. It's important to be in the know and get it right. Okay, let's open the books and get into it. My references: the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, USCG navigation rules, both international and inland. Now, this is what I use for my Merchant Marine Master Mariner examinations. The international rules are often referred to as the COLREGS, or collision regulations, also called the IRPC. Now, I'll use the COLREGS term in this video just because it's easier to say and probably more recognized as well. I'll use the term inland to refer to the inland rules of the road. You'll see that they do have differences. Now, the other legally binding rules of the road reference that I'll use is the World Sailing Racing Rules of the Road, RRS. For display in the video, I'll be using the publication Racing Rules of Sailing 2021 to 2024, published by U.S. Sailing. There is a new version of this publication out for 2025 to 2028, but I don't have the paper version yet, and I just happen to see that in the definitions we'll be talking about, there are no changes for 2025. But you can certainly find the 2025 to 2028 RRS online at the link that I'll put in the comments. So one other prefacing remark is that we won't be discussing what should happen if the rules are initially not followed between two vessels, and there's an imminent risk of collision, like at the last moment. And in that case, other things take over and different action should take place. And you can follow along with me with a display of the international and inland rules online at nauticalcharts.noaa.gov. I'll put that link in the comments too. Okay, finally! The first action, stand on vessel. It's mentioned in Rule 17 of the COLREGS. It's called action by stand on vessel. A stand on vessel has the obligation to keep a constant course and speed, which means that if they are turning or changing speed, they are violating the rule, even though the course they are on gives them higher priority over the other vessel. This is partly what came into play with the Andrea Doria. But there is also the action right of way. This is used in the inland navigation rules and the racing rules of sailing, RRS. Let's take the inland navigation rules first. In the inland navigation rules, it states that the right-of-way vessel is the one who determines the method and passing as well as initiates the signals or communication with the give-way vessel. It does not infer keeping course and speed. It is used in the rules about narrow channel and head-on rule situations. If you look close, you'll even see that it is the give-way vessel that should stand on, or in other words, hold its course. Just the opposite of the COLREGS. As a commercial captain on the Mississippi, from my view from the bridge, you can see why this special provision exists in the inland rules. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Alternatively, in the racing rules of sailing, the RRS, a right-of-way boat can change course and speed within specified limits, of course, as dictated by other RRS rules, but ultimately must give the other boat room to keep clear. Often in sailing, strict speed and course rigidity is really difficult or impossible to maintain. And in fact, in a racing situation, the right-of-way rules are authored to maximize not only safety, but fairness in the competition. Now let's talk about what is mentioned, where, and when. Do the COLREGS refer to the notion of right-of-way? Now, I don't see it indicated there at all, except for a very small section in the back called Annex 5 regarding rules for commercial shipping pilots. However, the action right-of-way is indicated, as I stated, in the inland rules, which are used on the rivers and on the Great Lakes. There is a special provision in Rule 14D which states that a vessel which is going downbound with the current has an automatic right-of-way over one that is upbound. Keep in mind that in practice, this includes the Great Lakes, where courses up and downbound can be a course well outside the sight of land. In the inland rules, the key statement for this is that the right-of-way vessel shall propose the manner of passage and initiate the signals. Shown here is one place from my own personal experience where this right-of-way action is extremely critical. The large bend on the Mississippi River, its only place where it actually goes a little bit north, by the way, just north of Red Wing, Minnesota. Downbound barges taking that curve have the right-of-way. A fully laden barge needs every inch of room to get around that curve. Just doing a stand-on action at that point is just not adequate. I've also been on one of the main rivers connecting the Great Lakes and encountered a large cruise ship at night in a narrow channel and in a thick fog. The narrow channel inland rule comes into play here. I happened to be downbound. While I was on a much smaller vessel, I knew that the skipper would be anxious to hear from me as to what I wanted to do for the passing. I made sure that I told them quite early, before any visual contact, since it was thick fog, what I wanted to do. That was part of my obligation as the right-of-way vessel. Just doing a stand-on action, as the COLREGS would dictate, is just not enough to alleviate the risk. The lingo we often use on the Mississippi with commercial vessels is, "I will pass you on your one side," indicating a port-to-port passing like a U.S. highway. The one indicating that one toot of the horn would be the sound signal, as it was in the good old days before radio. Or, "I'll pass you on your two side," starboard to starboard. However, this is far less common. So let's sum this up. When in international waters, or COLREGS waters, the notion of stand-on vessel is what applies when vessels meet. The inland rules are a little trickier. They state the same thing by default, except when the situation is a narrow channel or a head-on meeting. Then the notion of right-of-way applies, and that the right-of-way vessel chooses the manner of passing. When there is a current involved, which is pretty much assumed all the time, the downbound vessel always has the right-of-way. And where do the inland rules start when coming in from a COLREGS area? Well, that's a little complicated. The borders are indicated within the Navigational Rules book, at least for the USA, and are typically put on the chart as well. But you gotta know, especially if you have large commercial traffic around. Sailboat racing uses the notion of right-of-way and indicates that the right-of-way vessel may change course and speed, but needs to allow the give-way vessel room to keep clear. I would note that in the RRS there are other rules to keep the right-of-way rule fair, particularly when near marks and that a boat can't hunt the giveaway boat to force it to unreasonably change course. That discussion, however, is well beyond the scope of this video. But hang on, I'll have that later. And also keep in mind that for sailboats in a race using the RRS, but interacting with vessels that are not part of the race, the proper international and inland rules apply. So you see, both actions are right and both are wrong. It just depends on the situation. What's most important now is to understand that they both exist, are different, and where to apply them. Alright, so I hope this is useful. If you like it, be sure to give me a thumbs up. And if you want the others that I'll be making on similar subjects, please punch that subscribe and notify, and you'll get them hot off the press, so to speak. In the meantime, take a few minutes and look at the references that I included, and get the scoop straight from its source. Until then, fair winds and dry bilges, and no collisions. Please, know your rules.